One of the things I really want to explore with you today is, what are those thoughts, that inner chatter, that inner dialogue that we have that sometimes scuppers us? Where do they come from? What can we do to help with that? Because in actual fact, that inner dialogue is really the key, not only to peace of mind in life, but to success and to happiness as well. So that's what we're going to focus on today. You know, one of the things I really like, analogies I really like to use, is that of a caterpillar when it goes into a chrysalis. You can imagine what on earth is running through a caterpillar's mind when it goes into that chrysalis. Oh, I've enjoyed all this fresh air and eating leaves for ages. And now this dark brown thing is constraining me and growing around me. And this is scary. What on earth's going on? I can't move anymore. I'm struggling to breathe. And, sometimes in life, we do go through those moments, those chrysalis moments in life when things are more challenging and more difficult and hard, and we feel discouraged and we're finding it hard to keep going. But just remember, often you emerge from those times a new person with new strength, with new learning about yourself. Sometimes when I look back on the most challenging and difficult and painful times of my life, I do realize that some of my greatest understanding and learning and joys have come from those moments, difficult and painful as they were. So we do tend to emerge from those chrysalis moments of our life a beautiful butterfly and able to spread our wings a bit more and feel the strength to fly.
Just to give a bit of context to the reason why we asked Andrew to come and talk to us today was really around Mental Health Awareness Week. We're doing an awful lot of activities to try and raise awareness around good mental health, and specifically at this difficult time during COVID-19. We can all feel a bit like cabin fever, given the fact that lockdown a lot longer than I think we'd anticipated. So we thought it would be a good idea to ask professionals to come and talk to us around how we can support each other in terms of mental health, recognising, I guess, some of the signs and symptoms in others, and how we can move forward in the situation that we find ourselves in. So Andrew kindly agreed to talk to us. And so the idea is that he talks about 15, 20 minutes, and that we've got maybe 10 minutes or so for questions.
Thank you so much, Mary. So really nice to be with you all just for a few minutes today. And I really hope that there's something here that share this morning that's a help to us all in what's, a funny time, isn't it, that we're going through, out of our normal routine and not able to interact with each other in the same way that we used to. So I know we have amazing mums at home, for example, and dads, I guess, being very stressed with young kids. My heart goes out to them and I admire them so much. And then we've got people who are just on the other end of the spectrum, feeling very isolated. Some people feeling overwhelmed, very unsettled. So we just really wanted to share something today that I hope will be helpful for you and put some things in perspective and remind you of some things. And there's some really interesting concepts, so I hope that they are helpful to you. So just to start off with this thought then, that maybe it's not what happens to us in life, but how we react to it that matters. And I think that can be very true. And one of the things behind that, when we talk about our reaction to things, that often is in our head. So it's our internal chatter, the thoughts we have, makes so much difference. So that's really one of the things I really want to explore with you today is, what are those thoughts, that inner chatter, that inner dialogue that we have that sometimes scuppers us? Where do they come from? What can we do to help with that? Because in actual fact, that inner dialogue is really the key, not only to peace of mind in life, but to success and to happiness as well. So that's what we're going to focus on today, talking about our own inner dialogue, how we can be a bit more mindful of that, make it work for us a little bit better, and how we can also make it work for others better as well, to comfort, reassure, soothe them. So just remember this one thing, that a feeling always comes from a thought. Every feeling that we have is born from a thought. So if you're feeling bad, if you're feeling anxious, it's often really useful to trace that back to the thought that triggered that feeling. What did I think that led to me feeling that way? And then, we've got power to change that and do something about it. So one of my favorite books is this one. Came across it quite a few years ago now. What to say when you talk to yourself. And if we can only understand that and find the secret to that, then that can really be so transformative for us in life. So I wonder what it is that you say when you talk to yourself. So here we see, just summing up, the key to happiness, success, and peace of mind is how you talk to yourself. And I've just said that, haven't I? So when you look in the mirror, what do you say to yourself? If you're anything like my wife, this will be, she's got such a lovely figure, and yet she's always so very critical. And she seems to see something entirely different when she looks in the mirror to what I see. And then on the other extreme, we can sometimes do this as well, can't we? So I guess we need to find a bit of balance in the middle at times. But be careful how you talk to yourself, because remember, you are listening. And so the things that you say to yourself really matter, because it can certainly feel like either a punch or a hug. And it's something we have power over and some choice with. We're going to look at that today, the options we've got. So do be careful what you tell yourself, because you'll believe it. And I think we shouldn't believe everything we think. We should question that and be curious about that. The brain makes mental shortcuts, but sometimes it's not that helpful. So we're just going to talk for a few minutes about the way our personality is structured, just to help us understand where this inner dialogue comes from and how it's formed. So the easiest way to understand this is to imagine a filing cabinet in your mind with 3 drawers. And you can imagine the top drawer as your parent drawer. And this contains patterns of behavior, thinking and feeling that you inherited from parental figures in your life. So that could be your own biological parents or other important parental figures in your life, such as grandparents, teachers, or mentors. And then you have the child drawer at the bottom. And that is a pattern of thinking, feeling, and behavior that you learned as a child to survive childhood, as it were. And sometimes it's a reaction to what you lived through in your environment when you were a child as well. And then we have the drawer in the middle, which kind of mediates between the two, and that's our adult drawer. And that's how we make decisions in the here and now. So kind of the adult brings together all of our experiences that we've had, and we try to work things out as objectively and unemotionally as we can to make the best decision for us here and now, based on our current level of competence and understanding, whether we're 5 years old or we're 85 years old. So a simple way of looking at that, simple example is the parent would say, what should I do? What do others expect of me? What's the right thing to do? So the parent contains all our morals and the values and the social norms of life. The child loves playfulness. Our child loves playfulness. It looks for joy and wonder, creativity, taking risks. So the child part of us would say, well, what would I like to do? What do I want to do? And the adult tries to bring all that information together and work out the best way and makes a decision. So the adult's sometimes called the executive within us and says, right, this is what I'm going to do based on the information from you both. This is what I've decided on. So when anything happens to us in life, we immediately go back to this filing cabinet. We pull open one of those drawers, and there are millions of files in there. And these all come from what you've learned to think and feel and act right throughout life, and they're all linked together. So for example, if someone holds out their hands and says, how do you do? Your parent programming will say, oh, I've learned how to do this. And immediately you'll hold out your hand and shake their hand as well, because this is a parental pattern that you've learned over time. And then sometimes you come into a group, and some people have learned to be scared of groups in their childhood and in their family of origin. So they come into a large group and feel overwhelmed, and they're opening that child drawer and they're saying, oh no, I think groups are scary. I feel scared. I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to sit in the corner and hide from everyone. So our personality is really a conglomerate of all of these parent, adult, and child drawers. And it's the filing cabinet that we unconsciously open in any given moment, and we pick out patterns of how we're going to react in that current situation. Now, as I say, there are millions of patterns in there, but we're kind of a little bit lazy. So most of us pick the patterns that are at the beginning of the file. And because our brain is lazy, it's used to just selecting the things that we use most, the ones that we're most familiar with, the most comfortable with. And this is one of the reasons why we do what we do. We have lots of files in there, but we pick the ones we're used to. So maybe, for example, you've chosen to see yourself through the eyes of your parents or your teachers and the labels that they gave you as a child. For example, you hear them say, oh, Sarah, she's the brainy one in the family, or Matthew, he's the sporty one. And sometimes, you know, we build an identity for ourselves based on those things, and lots of messages like that we received over time. But the truth is, we've got millions of files in there, and they equate to millions of choices and ways of being. So sometimes it's really worth taking the time to reach back a little further in the drawer and choose a file that's a bit more appropriate to the person you want to be. And this is the sort of fun that we have in therapy. In therapy, we take time to explore those drawers and explore all those options that we have and think about what we really want to be, the person we really want to be, and the choices we'd really like to make. So one of the things I really hope you'll understand and take away from today is the fact that we all carry the experience of being a child with us through life. You know, from that very first feeling of being born, even though we don't physically remember that memory is carried inside from being completely vulnerable and helpless and entirely dependent on others for our survival. And then we also carry the experience of being a child through all the experiences, the worries, the feelings, the dreams we had as being as a child. That is all still very much a part of us. And in a way, we do carry a child with us throughout life. A child that can be easily frightened or upset or unsettled by new and unfamiliar circumstances and uncertainties that come into our life. Things that make us step out of the norm and out of our comfort zone and put us out of our normal routine. So exactly the kind of things that we're experiencing at the moment. So these are kind of some of the normal reactions that we might be feeling, and certainly our inner child might be feeling at the moment. So normal reactions to stress. Sometimes we have intrusive thoughts and feelings that get in the way, that continually remind us of what we're finding uncomfortable and difficult. We feel upset by them. Sometimes we have nightmares. We can feel really altered in the way we're perceiving things, in our mood, and feeling upset and scared and distressed. We can sometimes avoid thinking and feeling, so we can numb things out with addictive ingredients. Chocolate's one of my favorites. You know, binge set, our favorite TV series, everything to kind of distract us and take us away from the thing that's unsettling us. And finally, we can just sometimes be in such a state of distress that we're feeling very stressed, we're finding it difficult to concentrate, we're feeling angry and on edge, we've got that adrenaline pumping round, it's hard to sleep at night, and it's really hard to feel calm and relaxed. And the thing to understand about all of this is that all of those feelings come from that child part of us. The child part of us is really that felt experience of life. Now, we know that children are full of feelings that often they can't find words from. And sometimes children get overwhelmed by feelings, and they need a calm, patient adult to sort through those things and to comfort and reassure them. So in therapy, one of the things we do is we really try to strengthen a person's inner parent, and that's the way we talk to ourselves, the way we comfort and respond to those inner child fears, really, is to just really remember that we are carrying a child around within us. And if you think about how you would talk to a child, how would you comfort and reassure a child who is feeling unsettled and upset? Then that gives you a really strong indication for the way that we would be really helpful to talk to ourselves in that situation as well, and that inner dialogue that we need. So this diagram just shows that in a little bit more detail, the parent, adult, and child, with some little comic pictures to illustrate that. Now, one of the things to remember is that the parent in us is split into two different parts. So we have two different options for how to respond. And those two different parts in that filing drawer are called the controlling parent, that seeks to create order and compliance, that seeks us to, it puts boundaries in place and limits in place. It imposes morals on us and social norms. And then we also have the nurturing parent that is really seeking to provide comfort, safety, and well-being. So the nurturing parent side of us contains all of those memories, those sweet, lovely memories of being loved unconditionally and soothed and comforted when we have felt fearful in the past. So both have useful purposes. It's just important to keep them in balance, that one doesn't overwhelm the other. So here's a little example of that. So our child might be saying, oh, it's not looking good. What if this? What if that happens? No, I'm frightened that it's just not going to work out. I fear the worst is going to happen. And we make all sorts of links. We can easily catastrophize and just think the worst. And that's what might be going on for us sometimes when we feel anxious about something. So usually we'll have two normal patterns and ways of responding to ourselves in that moment. So the critical parent might say to us, just pull yourself together and get a grip. You know, if you'd listened to me in the first place, you wouldn't be in this mess for a start. If you'd have worked harder at school, if you'd put some savings aside, if you'd paid off debts while you had the chance, this would never have happened. Well, whatever happens now, one thing's for sure, you've only got yourself to blame, blah, blah, blah. You know, you can get the sense of it. We're familiar with what that feels like. And sometimes we talk to ourselves in that way. We talk to ourselves sometimes in a way that we would never ever talk to anyone else. You know, and it can be really harsh. And it can really make that inner child within us shrink back. And then the other option we've got is to speak to ourselves from that nurturing parent place. And the kind of things we would say to ourselves would be, you know, being honest, Andrew, any new change takes time to adapt to. You know, I know you're feeling unsettled now, and this is unsettling, and that's normal. But give yourself time to adapt. It'll all work out, you'll see in the end. And in the meantime, maybe it's a good chance to slow down a bit because you've been working really hard lately. Maybe this is a good chance to have some downtime, you know, to get in touch with yourself a bit more, to have some family time together. And before you know it, things will be back to normal and we'll all bounce back to the way things were before. So the nurturing parent can be a really sort of hopeful, positive, optimistic part of us. That's reassuring. Now, sometimes it's just worth thinking about why sometimes we don't engage the nurturing parent very much. Sometimes we lean on the controlling, critical parent, and we trust that voice more than the nurturing parent. And I think it's just worth thinking about why we do that, because I think one of the things is we're sometimes a bit more scared of the nurturing parent than we are of the critical parent voice. Because I think we fear that if we tell ourselves too much, if we nurture ourselves too much, that, you know, maybe we'll take the foot off the gas, maybe we'll relax too much, maybe we'll become a bit too soft and a bit too complacent and a bit too lazy. So sometimes we quite like that harsh voice of the controlling parent to just drive us, to be ambitious, to keep us on track. But the important thing is to keep both of those voices in balance. And sometimes we do really need, often the inner child is starved of the nurturing parent. And we find that in therapy a lot. When people come into therapy and they've suffered with anxiety and depression, we often do a lot of this work to get their nurturing parent to be stronger and a bit more effective and a bit more potent and powerful for them, and to be around a little bit more for them. So it's just really interesting to contemplate that. What is it that you say to yourself when you talk to yourself? You know, which voice are you more used to hearing inside? And I don't know if you've ever come across this story before, told by an old Indian chief. He said we have two wolves within us. One is evil, one is good. One is selfish and all about us. It's greed, it's resentment, it's all the things we hate. It's our anger. And one is a voice of calmness and goodness and kindness. And when the Indian chief told this story, one of the young braves said to him, well, which one wins? And the wise Indian chief said, whichever one you feed the most. And I think that's true when we think about the critical parent voice and the nurturing parent voice. Which one are we most used to using and to feeding and to encouraging to be around? And it may be that you just need a little rebalance as well, and maybe get that nurturing parent working a little bit more on your behalf to back you up a little bit more at times. Because after all, loving ourselves isn't vanity, it's sanity. It's a really necessary and important thing for good mental health, for happiness and well-being in life. And of course, there is the fallback positions as well. Though of course I couldn't possibly comment. But they are good to have around every now and again. So supporting each other, just a few words on that in closing, really. So the fact is that we're all different. There's no one set of symptoms to look out for when someone's not coping. The thing is that you've been around your colleagues a lot and you know them best. So I think that one in there, trust your instincts is important. But I also think that we need to take time to trust our instincts, because often we need to give our brain time sometimes to notice those things, to notice when someone's not right. So do take a little bit of time to stop and chat and to ask people how they're doing. And sometimes, like it says at the bottom there, we need to ask it twice. We're used to asking people how they're doing. And sometimes it's worth asking that question and repeating it again. And just saying, no, really, how are you really? I really want to know, I'm really interested. There's nothing like giving each other time. There's nothing like just taking a bit of time to notice. Life is at a frantic pace sometimes, and we rush around and we're very, very busy. But I think this is particularly an important time, and there's no time where it's not really important, is it, to really take notice of each other, because after all, as it said to us in the great book Christmas Carol, mankind really is our business. One another, the human family, looking after and taking care of one another. There's kind of nothing more important than that. And so kindness is really valued and really important. And I think that's one of the things that you've been focused on this week and perhaps throughout this coming year, is how can we really look out for one another and be genuinely kind. We need that from each other. We need compassion. We're so driven. We've got so many goals and so many objectives we're trying to meet. But let's make sure that kindness is one of the objectives, whatever we're doing in life, that is right up there. That is one of our priorities. And kindness comes from using that NP, that nurturing parent ability that we have. As we nurture that ability within ourselves more and become more used to talking to ourselves with that voice, actually what we find is that becomes habitual. It becomes a way of life. It becomes how we naturally talk to others as well. So they kind of say the more that you love yourself, the more that you are kind to yourself, the easier it is to love and be kind to others. So I think that's why we started off that way around today, talking about how we can be kinder and more compassionate to ourselves, and think about the voice we use in our inner dialogue, because that naturally then extends to others. That compassion naturally then comes across to others as well, if that makes sense. So just a few thoughts in closing before we have a chance to have a little chat together in a discussion. Remember, there is always hope. There is always, always hope. So do have faith in the future, faith in yourself, faith in others, and faith that it'll all work out, because it really, really will. It always does. We make it that way, don't we? We define that, we bring that about, we create that. And we've got the power to do that. We're really extraordinary, we will. And the story is told of a bomber that went down during the Second World War in the sea. And there was 2 life rafts, and the men were divided between these 2 life rafts. And in both life rafts, they had exactly the same number of men, exactly the same amount of resources and supplies. They weren't found for about 3 weeks, I think. And when they were found, in one life raft, everyone had perished and everyone had passed away. And in the other life raft, everyone was still alive. And really, when it came down to it in the interview, what they really felt was it came down to their attitude and their response to this issue. It was their mindset and their resilience had really made them, have that ingenuity and creativity, keep one another bolstered and see one another through. So our mindset and the way we talk to ourselves really makes all the difference to how we get through these bumps and these challenges that do come to all of us in life and that the universe tends to throw at us. So certainly positive minds full of faith and hope produce positive lives. And a useful question to ask in any of these circumstances, I think, is what can I learn from this? What is the universe trying to teach me? I believe, the world and the universe often wants to give us gifts in these hard times. So what are you looking for? Are you looking for the gift, and are you open to receiving it? As it says there, whether or not it's clear to you, no doubt the universe is unfolding exactly as it should. And maybe the universe is telling us and reminding us, don't worry about the hows. And isn't this true? We're just finishing on this thought. We're often so busy watching out for what's just ahead of us that we don't take time to enjoy where we are. So do take time to stay tuned to all the good stuff. Hasn't there been so much of it around? More time with family. We've certainly really enjoyed walks together, really enjoyed playing board games together, and a bit more time together to talk than we usually have. It's almost like people have said the universe has pressed the pause button. So while there's real challenges and there's real difficulties and there's real stresses going on, I wouldn't want to undermine or underestimate that. But there's been so much kindness and goodness, and I think this has been a real wonderful opportunity to really remind us of what the true priorities in life are. And in some ways, it's been very good for us and good for the planet. And hopefully things going forward will be better than they were, and the way we treat each other and remember the priorities in life may be better. So make sure to look for all the good stuff as well. And on that note, that's the way I'm going to end the presentation today. So I hope there's been something there that's been useful for you, and I really look forward to any questions you've got now, or anything you want to comment on, or any thoughts you have, or anything you'd like to discuss.
That's great. Thank you very much, Andrew. Can I just ask a really quick question just around why sometimes people want to have why that face-to-face interaction is so important to us? Because I think, we're all working in a virtual world at this point in time, but physically wanting to see somebody or to be with them is really quite important sometimes. And I think lots of people miss that, because whilst this is great and we can see each other, it's just not the same. So why is that so important to us, and how can we deal with that in a better way?
Yeah, absolutely. Solitary confinement drives people insane, doesn't it? It really does. And some of us are getting a bit of that right now. So yeah, the brain is designed to interact. If you think about, I'm often fascinated by the difference between a baby human and a baby elephant. When an elephant is born, within minutes, that baby elephant can feed itself, it can walk, it goes for a runabout. And of all mammals, human beings are the most helpless when they're born. And I really think that's designed by nature to give us an important message right from the start, that interdependency and interaction is really important, and that we do depend on one another. We need each other in order to not only survive, but to thrive. We really do need each other, and that interaction is so crucial. And the brain's designed to work through problems that way. It's designed to work things out by talking to one another and relaying things to one another and calming and reassuring one another. So yeah, I think maybe it's just about how we can do our best in the circumstances to still make time for that. So it's been wonderful to see all these pub quizzes online and these parties and the creative ways that we're finding ways to still interact with one another and get the benefit of that, even in these unusual times. So definitely take advantage of opportunities like that. And I've loved when I've been out for a walk, it's really nice. I'm always a person who says hello to everyone. But I've noticed a lot more people say hello back, and they're quite cheery when you're out and about. And that's so lovely to see, because I think we all do need that, don't we? Rely on that.
Anybody else got any questions?
I think going back to obviously the wolf analogy and how you feel, you know, there's two signs, you know, you've got the evil and the good.
Yeah.
Obviously everyone wants to feed into the good side. What mechanisms to, I suppose it's recognizing that you're veering on that other side. So how do you, because obviously this is all about, you know, the positivity, how do you get back over to, you know, feed the good side?
Definitely. And I think it's all about mindfulness and self-awareness. I mean, that's one thing that therapy is really about. It's giving you time to highlight, to notice what you're saying to yourself. Because often I don't think we like to think and feel sometimes. You know, sometimes we do everything we can to push thoughts and feelings down. So maybe the first thing is to be self-aware and notice the things you say to yourself. Notice what you say. Notice your patterns. And then be very conscious, because often this is a very unconscious process. So really begin the process of talking to yourself a lot more kindly and positively. Notice yourself doing that. Be gentle to yourself, you know. I think we can all do with a lot more of that. And if you're not used to that, because some of us maybe grew up in a very critical household where we didn't get a lot of nurture. So for some of us, it takes time to learn what that voice sounds like. So that's one of the things we'll do in therapy. The therapist almost mimics the nurturing parent, so that the time we spend with you and with the client, you can internalize that voice. So you can do that in a lot of ways. A lot of us like to be around positive people, like to be around loving and caring and kind people. So we can internalize what they've got. We love to be around people like that, because I think we want to shape our own internal voice to support us in a bit more way that's familiar with that. So I think those would be the steps I would suggest and recommend to help with that, Jane, if that's helpful.
Jane, you have to tell yourself how gorgeous you are. You have to every day you're gorgeous. That's exactly what you have to do.
Definitely.
Well, I'll do that as a mantra every morning.
Absolutely. Get some
positivity
going. And but honestly, if you notice yourself, the way you speak to yourself, I think we can be very cruel and blunt and self-critical at times, and it's really good to balance that out and notice that. And think about how we would speak to a child if a child were feeling that way. You know, we would never speak to a child that way. So why do we speak to ourselves that way? Crazy.
Have you got any more questions? Anything that you would like to?
Andrew, I've just got one comment, really.
Yes, please.
Just was when you were talking as a critical parent and then talking as a nurturing parent, and it's not so much just the words that you were using. Obviously, on the critical side, it's a bit harsh, really, isn't it? Some of the words that you used was very much your tone of voice as well. Yes. When you were critical, obviously your tone of voice was much harsher, but when it was nurturing, it was actually quite comforting to listen to you talking in that way as well. And you could imagine talking in that way to people, it kind of helps to calm them down. And if it's a problem, let's solve this problem together. Yeah. Even though it might be something bad, it's something we can work through together.
No, I'm really glad you noticed that and picked up on that, Angela. That's a great comment. Thank you so much. And, you know, when you train as a psychotherapist, I had 6 years of personal therapy, almost drove me mad. Going and talking about yourself and your own patterns of behaviors for 6 years. But yeah, it was a lovely experience in some ways. It's a lovely, lovely opportunity to just reflect on that inner voice and take more time for that gentle side and that nurturing side of our nature. I'm now a father to 6 children. And to be
Wow.
honest, that's one of the reasons why I trained as a therapist, because I really wanted to be more in touch with them and their needs, and understand how I could be a more effective parent for them. So it was really helpful for me to think about that and learn about that inner voice and practice that. And just notice yourself, like Angela said, the way you feel when you hear a voice like that. It makes you feel so much calmer and settled and more relaxed, instead of being on edge and sort of not chilled and things like that. So it makes a big difference to the way we feel. And so I'm glad that you felt that I was reading those examples out, because often it is that difference, isn't it, between that harsh inner voice and that soothing and comforting inner voice that we can choose to give ourselves.
Sorry, so Andrew, as managers, because I guess we've all got teams and people that we have to interact with. So is that something that we need to be mindful of? When we're talking to people who are stressed or who are having a difficult time finding themselves. Is that something that we should consciously do? We need to.
That's a wonderful thing to do. And one of the things that we are guilty of in our efforts to make things better, we often jump to solutions too quickly. When really the missing bit in the middle is validation. We need to know that it's normal to feel this way, that it's perfectly natural to feel this way. And in order for people to process what they feel, they need someone to listen and take the time to listen and let them talk about how they're feeling. And so sometimes we're too quick to try and give them solutions. And we miss that middle bit, which is just saying, how are you feeling? This must be tough for you right now. And that's totally normal to feel that way. And it's important to give yourself a bit of time and space when you're feeling like that, isn't it? And so I think that's a wonderful thing if we can validate and let people be where they are, let people feel what they're feeling, and just be alongside them. And just say, yeah, that's okay. Take a bit of time, that's normal, we all need that. So it's a wonderful thing that managers can do, I think, instead of jumping to solutions, to be sort of an emotionally intelligent and in touch managers. That's a great thing, as I know, Mary, you are a great example of.
And I didn't even bribe him with that, How is that? That's chocolate and a fiver. Well done. I am conscious, Andrew, that we've also got a message in the chat. I don't know whether that's something that perhaps.
Oh, fantastic! I didn't pick up on that.
Help with.
Could you?
Do you want me to read it out?
Yes, please, if you wouldn't mind.
Do you have any recommendations for books or resources aimed at a child aged 10 who's struggling with mental health? For example, missing the structure of school or unable to process their emotions and disengaging from people and normal activities that they would typically like?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. What I'll do, Mary, is that okay if I look up a couple of resources and send you an email with some suggestions?
Yeah, of course. Of course I will.
So I'll do that, and then Mary can circulate that. And then I think it's tough, isn't it? I think that validation part is probably really important to say. We're in a new place here, and it's going to take us time to find our purpose in this place and to find our flow in this place. And just let yourself know that that's okay, and it's okay for the kids as well. Parenting is a whole new thing altogether. We could talk all day about that as well. It's so wonderful. One of the greatest things I learned, because when I was first a dad, I went out and bought a bookshelf full of parenting books. And one of the things that was a common thread throughout them all was the principle that whatever behavior you want to see more of, that's the behavior that you should give the most attention to. And often we get it the wrong way around. So we do that with our partners, don't we? We come home from a meeting or from work tired at night, and our partner hasn't unloaded the dishwasher again, and we're like, oh, typical. Couldn't you have just done that for me that one time? Come on, really tired. So another way of doing that is just to highlight the positive and say, Ed, when I came home that time and you'd unloaded all the dishwasher, I was so grateful. That was really brilliant. You know, I really appreciated that, and it meant a lot to me. And you turn a negative conversation into a positive one. Now, we will take negative attention because we like any form of attention, but the attention we love the most is positive attention. So let's, you know, as managers and as parents, take the time to notice people doing good and let them know that you've seen it. And that one thing, you know, noticing each other, being a bit more generous in praise and thanking one another, that can really make life feel so much better and sweeter, and that can really settle us all the more as well. So in the meantime, just know that it's normal. We are out of our normal routines. It's going to take time to get into a new routine, but don't try and force it. Let it come, and reassure one another that it's okay in the meantime, that we will feel a bit unsettled and out of our normal routine, and that's completely natural, but we will get there, you know, have that hope and optimism. And I think children really love and appreciate those messages. And if you can assure yourself of that, and I think that spirit and that message will come across to the kids as well, and will really comfort and settle them. You know, just remember first and foremost that we're human beings before human doings. You know, often we have a task list every day of things to do and objectives to meet. But first of all, let's take care of us just being okay with each other, loving and taking care of one another, being kind. And we'll be all the more effective at the doing if we get the being right thing. So I hope
and so praise the Lord, Andrew.
Absolutely.
I really just want to go hallelujah.
Yeah, there's a lot of hyperbole here today, isn't there? But these principles are all true. They all work. They're all scientifically verified as well, and they're robust and they're evidence-based, and they really make a huge difference in practice. So
okay, I'm really conscious of the time, Andrew, as well, because I'm conscious we've kind of gone over time. So has anybody got any other questions that like to ask Andrew at this point in time? Or if not, you can email them through, and we can ask Andrew for a response. And equally, you know, if Andrew's going to give us some hints and tips around books and resources, that
yes,
would be
will do. Yeah, fantastic. Well, and the most of all is to strengthen that nurturing parent, and just let yourself know that you're doing an extraordinary job in extraordinarily challenging and different times. So I think that message is important to give yourself.
Okay. Have we got any other questions?
Can I just say, Andrew, I've related to every single thing you said throughout my life. And I've really, really enjoyed your presentation. It's put loads in perspective. I went through a bad time years ago, and then kept going in that bad time. But now I've come out the other end, and I can relate to being how easy life is when you're positive and when you don't give yourself a hard time. When you accept, right, I'm having a bad day today, just go with it, because tomorrow it might be different, it might not, so just go with it today. And I've really, really enjoyed your presentation. Thank you.
Oh, Kim, that's so nice of you to say. Thank you so very much. That really means a lot, and I'm so glad to hear that about your experience as well. And thank you so much for sharing that. I
do think for me, it was really difficult to go from gauging your negative thoughts to positive thoughts. And it took a lot of practice, but now it kind of comes natural to us, and I'm a really positive person. I always get told I'm a positive person, and I'm always happy, and I've been like that for about 10 years now, and I'm just happy with everything. Wow. I do think it takes time to get there. See, so all of you guys, be around Kim as much as you can, and that'll internalize a nurturing parent in you as well. That's so wonderful. You know, one of the things analogies I really like to use is that of a caterpillar when it goes into a chrysalis. You can imagine what on earth is running through a caterpillar's mind when it goes into that chrysalis. Oh, I've enjoyed all this fresh air and eating leaves for ages. And now this dark brown thing is constraining me and growing around me, and this is scary. What on earth's going on? I can't move anymore. I'm struggling to breathe. And you know, sometimes in life we do go through those moments, those chrysalis moments in life, when things are more challenging and more difficult and hard, and we feel discouraged, and we're finding it hard to keep going.
But just remember, often you emerge from those times a new person with new strength, with new learning about yourself. You know, sometimes when I look back on the most challenging and difficult and painful times of my life, you know, I do realize that some of my greatest understanding and learning and joys have come from those moments, difficult and painful as they were. So we do tend to emerge from those chrysalis moments of our life, a beautiful butterfly and able to spread our wings a bit more and feel the strength to fly. So just think those things to yourself during those difficult and challenging moments, as it sounds like you did a great job of doing, Kim.
It was tough, but now there's a lot of people who can't understand my mindset, because there's a lot of stigma attached to mental health, isn't there? And it's difficult to change some people's mindsets, and some people don't want to either.
Yeah. Mental health, it just means some days we're feeling healthy in our mind, some days we're not. And it's really just a normal thing, just like the common cold or heart attacks. You know, physically it can go from one extreme to the other, and mental health can do the same.
Yeah.
But certainly we all have mental illness some days that we find more challenging to feel good and to feel healthy within ourselves. And some days, you know, we're flying high. So yeah, it's just to be really accepting and gentle with one another and aware of that, really. So yeah, I am aware of the time, so I just don't want to keep you guys too long, but that's been really, really valuable. And it's been such a pleasure to meet you all today, and sending lots of warmest wishes your way, guys, for be happy, take good care, and do sort of enjoy yourselves and keep looking out for the good and look after each other.
Thank you very much, Andrew. That's been great. I really appreciate it.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Take good care.
See you soon. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye for now.